This is probably bad for former President Trump. I mean, this is, if he goes in front of the grand jury, it shows that this is more than, what did John Eastman do, the attorney that basically came up with that crazy scheme to overturn the election. And it probably is a very deep interest in what the president did. We'll see where this goes, but there's no doubt that this investigation has developed further along than where we either knew it was or thought it was a few months ago.
January 6th committee member Republican Adam Kinzinger on how potentially bad things could be for the ex-president now that the Justice Department has subpoenaed his former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone. Cipollone is now the highest-ranking January 6th-era White House official called to testify in the federal grand jury's criminal investigation into that day. It's a significant step in what has become a clear shift in the DOJ's focus to the ex-president's conduct. And we already have a pretty good idea of what he could tell them. Last month, the January 6th committee shared some of their interview with Cipollone, who witnessed and repeatedly tried to stop some of Trump's most extreme efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Cipollone testified that he vehemently pushed back on terrible ideas with serious legal risks like seizing voting machines, and that he and other Trump officials believed there was no sufficient evidence of fraud. Joining us now, New York Times congressional reporter Luke Broadwater and MSNBC legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance. Luke, walk us through your reporting and what this says about where the DOJ investigation is heading at this moment.
Well, I think what we're seeing is that the DOJ started out early on in this investigation on the day of January 6th, going after the rioters, and they charged more than 800 of them over time. And what happened in that next year and a half was that the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol sort of got ahead of DOJ, and they started going deep into the investigation into the Trump White House. And they started laying out lots of evidence about the fake electors scheme and other plans for Donald Trump to stay in power. And they provided, in my view, sort of a roadmap for where DOJ can go next as they work up from the rioters up the food chain to higher ranking officials in the Trump administration. And this was major news that the top two lawyers in the Trump White House, Pat Cipollone and Pat Philbin, have received subpoenas from the Justice Department to testify. And we know that the Justice Department is asking questions about Donald Trump himself. So again, we're seeing a buildup of the case, and I think they're looking very specifically at the former president.
So, Joyce, we've been here before. We've heard it before, right? But should Trump really be worried right now?
So the point you're raising, I think, is one we have to be willing to contemplate, which is that not all criminal investigations result in charges being filed. That can either be because there's insufficient evidence or for a variety of other legal reasons. You know, if you're Donald Trump, the eternal optimist who believes that you're Teflon coated, then maybe you're not worried yet. But he absolutely should be, because the value of bringing in people like the former White House counsel signifies that DOJ has gotten serious about this investigation. And no matter where they were in 2021, here in 2022, they want to know about conversations that the former president had with his White House counsel, who may be uniquely situated to talk about the former president's views, perhaps whether or not he accepted the notion that he had lost the election, and very importantly, how he responded when he was confronted with the fact that his schemes to remain in power were increasingly approaching illegal territory, up to and including what he did on January 6th.
So, Luke, speaking of conversations, here's some of Cipollone's testimony the January 6th committee shared about the unhinged December 18th Oval Office meeting.
We were pushing back and we were asking one simple question as a general matter. Where is the evidence? So,
what response did you get when you asked Ms. Powell and her colleagues, where's the evidence?
A variety of responses based on my current recollection, including, can't believe you would say something like, things like this, like, what do you mean, where's the evidence? You should know, and things like that, or, a disregard, I would say, a general disregard for the importance of actually backing up say with facts.
Luke, what other information could Cipollone tell the DOJ at this point?
Well, Pat Cipollone was in on some of the most significant meetings during Donald Trump's push to overturn the election. He was there when there were proposals to seize voting machines entertained. He was there when there were discussions about meddling in the Justice Department. He was there when there was a discussion about sending a provably false letter to Georgia officials saying the Justice Department had found fraud in their election and asking for it to be overturned. And of course, he was there on January 6th. We heard testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson and others during the January 6th committee hearings that he was going in and out of the Oval Office during discussions about whether Mr. Trump should try to call off the mob, and that he had felt that not enough was being done to call off the mob, and he thought more needed to be done. So there's any number of avenues they could ask him about. And again, we don't know exactly what questions they will ask Mr. Cipollone or who they're looking at potentially for criminal charges. It could be lower ranking officials, or it could be Mr. Trump himself. But we do know that this investigation is escalating and is getting more serious.
So, Joyce, with Cipollone coming more and more in focus, Adam Kinzinger said today that he just hopes Pat Cipollone just tells the truth and that there's no reason to protect criminal behavior with executive privilege. How do you expect this DOJ subpoena to play itself out?
DOJ is in solid legal footing, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it'll be instantaneous, because while there's D.C. Circuit case law that suggests that government employees have an obligation to come forward and share information about criminality, there are some legal twists and turns to that argument, and including whether or not the Supreme Court will want to consider the issue itself or whether it will leave the Circuit Court of Appeals decision in place. So I don't think we're at the point yet where we can load up on popcorn and get ready to listen to Pat Cipollone testify, or at least hear reporting about what he said. I don't think, though, that it's in a future that's too far distant.
Although I could use some popcorn. Luke and Joyce are sticking around. When we come back, yet another part of the federal government seems to have also wiped its phones clean. And any messages relevant to January 6th. Coincidence or cover-up? There are new calls to try and figure that out.